Hey guys! So, in this video we are going to talk about how to avoid missing your deadline as best as you humanly can, and how to avoid delays, and more importantly, thinking about the people who are downstream from you. So let's get into it. Now, what do I mean by downstream? Well, let's talk about context. So, the other day, a subscriber of mine reached out and asked for some thoughts on how to avoid missing deadlines and stuff of that nature. And you see, I'm a little bit of, well, I wouldn't say an expert on this, but I have quite a few things that could be useful to know about this stuff. At least from my perspective, these are the sort of things that I've found to be most useful when it comes to having, like, to have a streamlined process for consistently delivering on time and without compromising the quality of the product overall. Because this subscriber of mine had an issue at his company with this. So the tips that I gave away, or rather the thing that I told him was basically this. Now, mentally picture something in your head. So, every single feature that you will ship, every piece of work that you will do on behalf of the company is basically a river. It starts at the top of the river, where you have your CTO, your CEO, and all the stakeholders, where they decide what it is that they want. And basically what that means is that they are the start of this river. Then it flows downwards to the next section of this river, basically, where your product manager and you basically estimate the work. The developers take hold, and the developers are now responsible for implementing what is coming from upstream. Once that's done, the testers are the end, most likely. You can make an argument for operations people as well, but for the most part it's the testers who are at the end of this river. This means, and I truly feel sorry for the testers out there. I have met some amazing, I've met some shitty testers, but I've met shitty people all together. But I've also worked with some of the best testers I've ever had the good fortune of knowing, and it really pains me when I see how hard their lives, like their career situation is. Now, not at the job level, because testers are in high demand overall. Like, it's very, very nice to have a tester or a QA person of some sort on your team if you can afford it. But being a tester in a non-streamlined process is the shittiest job there is. Just imagine it. Because if we think about it as a river, that means that if somebody messes up at the beginning of this little flow, that means that whatever then comes next is going to take more time. Which means that the tester, who is at the end of this, will always be in the situation where that person has to deal with whatever time is left over from all the other stuff. What basically happens is that if the stakeholders at the top of the river give you unclear specifications or something that makes the development process take longer, that means that the total amount of time that you have estimated something to take will, the time that you have estimated is still the time. You have a deadline. There's a finite amount of time you're allowed to use in order to do this, which means that the longer development time you need, the less testing time you have. And I have been in on some rough days where a tester has been in this horrible situation where the stuff doesn't work. They found issues or small things here and there that are considered to be things that produce worse quality, basically. And imagine being that poor sucker having to sit there and basically be in the position where, well, my job is to say that no, this is not ready for production, but if I do, we will break the deadline. Imagine being there, and you have no way of stopping it. Well, technically, you have, from my experience, two things you can do to stop this. And these are the tips that I gave to my subscribers. So the first tip is that you have to make sure that when the stakeholders at the top of the river are giving you your work, that they know exactly what they are after. No ambiguity, there should be absolutely no questions, because some stakeholders, I've met them, they will be kind of loose about, they don't really know what direction they're going, the designers aren't really sure what, the job isn't done, like the designs are not done, the specifications are not done, you don't have everything you need. All that stuff is going to delay you. Unless they have done their job, you cannot do yours. You have to be very clear on communicating that. You have to tell them that if you go out of the estimation meeting where you estimate how much time you will need in order to do the things that they are asking you to do, if you don't know, if they don't have a clear specification, tell them. You have to tell them. You have to say that, well, I have all these questions and you can't answer these questions and the designs aren't done and so forth. So I can only give you a rough estimate, and it's probably going to be wrong, because the less I know about the situation, the more likely it is that my estimation of how much work or how much time this is going to take the likelihood goes up that it's going to be wrong, right? That's number one. You have to know what it is that you are going to build. Without that, everything, you trust me, the looser the specification, the shittier the situation for everybody downstream. So that goes to all stakeholders, POs, managers, CTOs, like whatever. You need to know what the hell your dev team is supposed to be building. If you don't know, how should they know? Because otherwise there's going to be all these questions, because that brings us to step number 2. And this is the developer's responsibility. The developer's responsibility is to make sure that they have a joint understanding of how to build something, what it is exactly that they are supposed to be building. And this has to do with synchronization. A lot of developers that I talk to talk about having meetings as this thing that wastes time. And yes, to a point, it is true that a lot of meetings could probably be cut out and not waste so much time. But I can tell you this, if you are ever in a situation at your job where you start building on a feature and your coworker comes over and says, hey, why are you doing that thing? I thought we were doing that thing. If that has ever happened to you, if you have ever seen a piece of work go through that pipeline and you thought that it was supposed to work in a different manner, that means that you didn't have enough meetings. Hear me out. The reason for having a meeting or having a sync up where you synchronize everybody is so that every single person on the team knows exactly what is supposed to be produced at the end of everything. Because it's very, very often that I find that people have this thing where you think that you see the same thing in your head, but you haven't really talked about it. And when it comes down to specifics, you really have different ideas on how to exactly build something. And I am sorry, you're working in software. Details do matter. They matter a lot. I know it's unnatural for us humans to think in such painful detail, but programmers have to think in painful detail. I am sorry. This is the job, guys. So that's number 2. Make damn sure that all of your programmers, everybody who is involved in the development process, knows exactly what it is that you're supposed to be building. What I will do, I've made a few videos about this as well. I will do everything as a participant in these meetings. I will sit down with them and I will explain in pseudocode, just talking, saying that these are the steps that I foresee that we are going to take and so forth. And I will just repeat that process until every single person can, word for word, repeat what I was about to say. The thing you're going for is that if you get sick, your coworker should be able to pick up your story immediately and just keep on working because you have the same code in your head. That's what you're going after. If the developers are all seeing the same code in their head, that's perfect. Perfect. And if you abide by these 2 rules, the testers usually have enough time to actually do their job. So that's what we're going for. The red thread through all of this is you need to know what it is you're building. And you've heard me say this before. Software development is very rarely about how problematic it is to produce the right code. It's most likely often, or it's more likely that your problems are going to come from people having different mental images of what is going to happen at the end of this river. Because if you're not building the same thing mentally, that's where all the confusion comes from, all the questions, all the back and forth and synchronizing like that. That's where all this comes from. And trust me, you will feel as if you're wasting time on having one extra meeting to just talk about how to exactly build something. But just take it from somebody who's been here 100 times, guys. The time you spend on that extra meeting, where you just make sure that everybody knows exactly what it is that you're supposed to be building, is far less than the time you will spend on just confusion and trying to get a hold of stakeholders to get answers to questions that you find. And what's even worse is that you don't want to be in a situation where at the end of it, because of all this confusion that comes with not knowing exactly what it is that you're supposed to be building, you have to hack things together, and the quality of the project actually goes down if you're not very clear about what it is that you want to be producing. So that's my tip to you guys. Number one, make sure that your stakeholders clearly tell you what it is that you're supposed to be building. If they can't give you that, tell them that you don't know how long it's going to take, and send them back. If at all possible, make them fix these things before you estimate how much work it is. Second thing is, every single person on the dev team needs to have the same code in their head. It's been working out very well for me and my coworkers. Have a great day.